Hello and welcome to the Abstract Ear. In this video I want to talk about guitar amps and why you probably don't need one. Guitar amps do two things. Number one, obviously they make your signal louder so that it can drive a speaker and so that people can hear you play. But number two, they really shape your sound. An amp applies an EQ curve, limiting and compression, often in a very non-linear way. This means that the tone shaping effect can be radically different depending on various characteristics of the incoming guitar signal, as well as how loud the amp's turned up. This behaviour imparts a huge amount of flavour to the sound, and is really why the guitar amplifier is considered as much a part of the electric guitar as an instrument as the guitar itself. However, this non-linearity can also be a problem. If you ask most guitarists how to make an amp sound better, they'll say, turn it up. Turning an amp up loud makes all of the components in the circuit start to really push or exceed their tolerances, which is where the magic happens. The circuit starts to distort, compress and sag, and really comes alive in interesting ways, which gives the amp a huge amount of its unique character and feel. But there are two big downsides to this. First, most guitarists can't turn their amp up loud most of the time. Some people are lucky enough to have a soundproof studio or rehearsal room, but most of us have to play and practice at home, surrounded by neighbours and children and people who might object to very loud noises. The second downside is about predictability. If you play in a band, you probably practice at home, then maybe jam in a rehearsal studio, and then play gigs in various venues of different shapes and sizes. What this means is that you're constantly turning your amp up and down to fit the context of where you're playing. So if you dial in a tone you like at home, and then go to rehearsal room and you need more volume to compete with a drummer, your tone's going to sound completely different. So, what can we do instead? The idea behind an ampless setup is to use pedals or other devices to simulate some of that tone shaping effect that you would otherwise get from an amp. Of course, the benefit of using pedals is that it's silent. You need headphones or some recording device to listen to it. Now, there are lots of different ways to do this, so I'll just talk about my approach. I use two pedals in place of an amplifier: the Electronic Audio Experiments Model feT and the Bluguitar Blubox. The Model feT is made in Boston, Massachusetts, and according to the maker's website is a transistor-based preamplifier designed around the legendary Sun Model T. Now, the Sun Model T was an amp from the 70s that's best known for being really loud. It's essentially a Fender-style design, but with a really loud, clean, powerful power amp. So this pedal is based on the circuit from that amplifier, but with transistors instead of valves, and of course some other tweaks to the circuit to kind of capture some of the flavour of that amp. I run this pedal pretty clean, just on or below the edge of breakup, but it does have some great drive tones in there as well if you turn up the gain. The other component is the Blubox from Bluguitar. This is a speaker simulator, or cabinet emulator, which uses a technique called impulse response modelling to digitally capture the physical characteristics of various different speakers and microphones in order to shape the sound in a similar way that a guitar speaker in a cabinet with a microphone on it would. There are lots of pedals of this sort available. The reason I like this one is because it doesn't have any menus or screens or presets. I like my guitar pedals with just knobs and switches. I use the black 2x12 setting, which I picked just because it was the one I liked the most after trying them all. From the Blubox, I run straight into my headphones for practicing, or in this case, I run into my audio recorder from the XLR output. So most pedal demos start by showing you how the amp sounds with the pedals turned off. Of course, in this case, I can't really do that because the pedals are the amp. I can show you how the Blubox sounds without anything running into it, which should be fairly boring and a bit flat. And now with the Model feT turned on, really fattens up and thickens the sound and responds in quite an amp-like way to what I'm playing. Listen when I really dig in. Now usually you wouldn't use an amp completely dry, especially not in a studio. In between the Model feT and the Blubox, I use the red Panda Context reverb, currently on the plate setting, for a little bit of that reverb that you would normally get from an amp or from a room or from a studio reverb. And then on top of that, my basic clean tone also includes the Fairfield Circuitry Maude delay. Now at some point I'm going to do a whole video about fuzz, but just to give you a taste of how this takes other pedals, I'm going to turn on one or two of these fuzzes and just have a bit of a play around. So that's how and why I set up my ampless pedalboard rig. To recap, the big benefits of this are: 1. Silent playing and practicing at home with headphones. 2. Much more predictable sound in live environments. Just plug into a PA and everything will just get louder without sounding different. And 3, it's much less bulky than an amplifier, at least if you haven't got as many pedals as I have. Okay, that's it for the video. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, please subscribe to the channel, follow us on Instagram, and tell all your friends. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.